Good morning. Uh, we are you're in the digital accessibility online content session. I don't know if Christy, did you want to introduce it?
Yes. This is Christy with Extension IT. Dr. Zaire Jordan, the Web Accessibility Coordinator for Iowa State, is joining us today to present on the second part of the Digital Accessibility webinar series. And this will be on online content. So if you upload content or add content to a website, she's going to cover a lot of the things um, that would impact your work and what you're doing. She's also going to cover some of the stuff that Extension IT takes care of for you, but just to give you a broader understanding of the topic overall. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to her and use the chat box to ask questions.
Can't hear.
Let's see that. Can everyone else hear okay? Are we just not talking loud enough?
Could use a little bit more volume.
Okay, just a little closer to the microphone.
Okay, so let's get started then, and let us know if you can't hear us. Very difficult to hear. Oh, much better. We need to be close. Okay, so let me advance the slide. Basically, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to do a brief review of what we may have covered last time. But since there might be people in the audience who might not have attended the previous session, I wanted to make sure that you get a general understanding of what digital accessibility entails. And then we're gonna dive into the how-to, the meat of the question that everybody asks. We are all fine with doing accessibility, but we don't know how to. So tell us how to do it. And as Christy said, we're gonna cover types of content that you may create yourself, and we're also may cover types of content that may be created for you, but still it's good that you learn about the intricacies of what does it take for making this content accessible. So what is digital accessibility? And the same image that I presented to you in the first session, digital accessibility basically means that everybody can access content online, not only web content, not only what you would find on a website, but Word documents that you may send by email messages themselves. All the content that is presented in some digital format should be accessible not only for persons with disabilities, but for everybody. Users of a cell phone who might be in a place where there's a lot of light, users of tablet who might be wanting to view a video, but there's too much noise in the background and they resort to the captions. Users like myself who are not native English speakers and need to see the captions to make sure that they understand what is being said on a video. So I just mentioned a few different measures of digital accessibility, amongst them captions, alternate text for images, and so on and so forth. In a minute, you're going to see a lot more of this in detail, but suffice it to say that digital accessibility, as you see here, means that people with disabilities can use the web and all digital content, I would add, but it also benefits people without disabilities. And you see here in the image a person who has been blindfolded so that they can experience what a person who might not be able to rely on vision, what they experience when they have to surf the web. It's a very enlightening exercise. If you have the chance, I would encourage you to do it, and you would need, of course, a screen reader to be able to have that experience. We can talk about that more in depth at some future point. Digital accessibility, as I said, is make the web accessible to all, and there are persons who might have visual disabilities that it's not necessarily blindness or low vision. There's a lot of people that have some sort of color blindness, and as you see here, there is a simulator that allows for you to experience or at least see what a person with color blindness might see themselves. So in here I used the image of a traffic light, and there's at least three different representations of what different color blindness conditions would entail. And I have included the URL for the simulator so that you might visit it and play around with it. It's really a great experience to be able to go through these simulators yourself so that you see what does it mean to have a disability. Also, there's one another simulator that you can resort to. It's a hearing loss simulator, as you see here, and the simulator allows for you to listen to audio of with different types of audios, as you see here in the dial, with normal audition, mild hearing loss, and so on and so forth. So I have included the URL as well, as you see here, it's starkey.com hearing loss simulator, so that you may experience it and see how it feels to a person who has hearing loss, to not be able to listen to the content that they have to listen to in the web. So basically, that was the small review, the brief review that I wanted to provide about accessibility. It is important that when we are creating content that is going to end up in the web, which is most of the content that we create in computers, Word documents, Excel documents, PowerPoints, and at the end, websites, when we are creating that type of content, that we take accessibility into account. I presented the simulators to you because I feel like those help you evoke empathy because they help you experience what a person with a disability would experience. And going through that experience is going to open your eyes as to what do you need to do in terms of making things accessible. It becomes kind of like second nature once you're exposed and develop the empathy for persons with disabilities. Again, disability or accessibility is not only good for having this content be accessible to all, but it's good for business because if you want your website to be visited and your website is accessible, it's not only going to be accessible for persons with disabilities, but it's going to be a lot more accessible to everybody, and it's going to be a lot more findable, quote unquote findable, by search engines. Like if you somebody is searching for something in Google, if your website is accessible, it has included the measures for it to make the content accessible, then that website it's probably going to come higher in the list that Google presents. So as a result, you might get a lot more visits into your content. And I think that generally when you publish things online, you want people to see them. So how to go about doing this? How to create accessible online content? And we have, as a resource, we have guidelines that a group of experts have developed. These are called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and they are published by the World Wide Web Consortium. This is an organization that was created by Tim Berners-Lee, the creator of the code that allows for us to view things online and have a web. And these experts have developed these guidelines that are very, very thorough. I have in this slide that I'm presenting here, what I've tried to do is summarize them and make it so that they are a lot more understandable. And as you see here, there are things on the left that are more of a general sense in terms of design and general aspects of putting content together. And the things on the right hand, there are more technical. So let's go through them. First of all, if you're designing some sort of content, be it a Word document, a website, whatever type of digital content, you should have your content be simple and organized. That's kind of like intuitive. If you have too much of a cluttered layout, it might not be read completely. The user might get confused. So think about it, be intentional about your content and have it be simple and organized. Easy to see and hear, of course. If you are presenting a video, make sure like we're just confronting problems with your with the audio because I wasn't too close to the mic. So when you're recording something, make sure that it's it's easy to hear for the user. Make your content be readable and understandable. You have to be intentional about the content itself. When you're editing your content, be it textual, you have to be intentional about how to express yourself. So it goes as in deep as to how to put together your text, how what you're trying to express, what you're trying to convey to your user, and also readable because there are fonts like for instance mostly everybody knows that if you write in all caps it's not as readable as if you write in higher and lower case, and so on and so forth. Have it be predictable and consistent. What does that mean? I mean, if you have a button that is going to appear through your website to the right upper side, make it so that it's there always. It's in the same place always. That's predictable. That's consistent. That allows the person that is visiting your website to be able to relate to your content more easily because they're going to be able to know in advance what's expected of them, and it becomes kind of intuitive for them to interact with the content in this predictable way. Eight, navigation, findability, and orientation. Basically, guide your user through your content. If you have something at the bottom of the page that you want your user to look at for sure, make it so that somehow you're going to communicate it to your user that content is at the bottom and it's necessary for them to read it or view it or use it. And finally, on the left side, aid in error correction or avoidance. If possible, give them messages, give your user messages. If, for instance, they're filling out a form, give them feedback through the form so that they are able to understand that there's this or there's this thing, there's this task that they have to complete in order for the form to be correctly filled out. Those are tidbits and they might not apply to the type of content that you yourself put together, but these are general design principles and general design measures that you can take with you and be intentional about them when you're putting together some sort of content. Then on the right side, we have the technical aspects. And as you see here, text alternatives for non-text content. If you insert an image in your website or in your Word document or in your PowerPoint, you should always include a text alternative for that image. And there are different ways that you can accomplish this depending on what type of program you're using, or if you're coding a website, or even if you're doing WordPress or Drupal. There's different ways that these different content management platforms allow for you to create those. And maybe Christy can fill you in more in the types of things that you're going to see.
Yeah, specifically for the images, depending on which platform of ours you're using, I do know that our Drupal 6 content editors, for instance, our county sites and our extension homepage, we do actually have some spots where they're adding images that they have no ability to add alternative text, because, sorry. Sorry, Brian. Is that better? Cool. Okay, so I'll just repeat what I was going to say. As far as the image alternative text, it really depends on which platform of ours you're using. Drupal 6, if you're a county editor or the extension homepage editor, there are a couple of spots where there's actually no way for them to add alternative text.
If any of you saw John Lawrence's update on Monday, you'll know that we're working on transitioning county websites. We're starting that process of getting things ready to do that. So that will be resolved at that point, but not until then. But all of our Drupal 7 websites, our newer websites, they actually are required to enter alternative text now to help that. But um, yeah, I think for the most part, the ability is there, except for a few specific instances. And it's just a matter of actually entering it and knowing what to enter.
Mhm. In terms of what's best practice as to what type of description you should enter for an image, my two recommendations that I give always is try to think of what you're trying to convey to a visual user with that image and try to describe it to a non-visual user. And also the second one is contextual. You're putting that image in a context. So it's important to keep in mind what the context is. So those two things are important when you're describing an image. And at least if the one important thing is convey to the non-visual user what you wanted to convey to the visual user.
Yeah, and I just a few like the Iowa State University Extension and Outreach word mark. I mean, you would literally just write out the words
Exactly.
as the alternative
Hmm.
text. And then if you had two guys standing in a cornfield talking to each other, I mean, you would want to put that as your
Hmm.
alternative text, right?
Definitely,
Yeah, okay.
definitely. Okay, the next one is alternatives for time-based media, and that basically refers to videos or audio. So if you have a video, you should have captions. If you have audio, you should have an audio description, and those are measures that may be more in depth. I don't know if they come across some content that they create like that, videos.
I think there are some videos out
Mm-hmm.
there. Obviously, we have people sharing on platforms where captions are not available, such
Mm-hmm.
as Snapchat or I think Facebook might actually have an
Yeah,
alternative right
yeah.
now. But actual videos that you're uploading to YouTube or Vimeo, those do have captioning capabilities,
Mm-hmm.
which we've done some webinars and training on, and
Mm-hmm.
we also will help if you need it. So, yeah, I can include that when I email out this
Mm-hmm.
presentation link. I can include some of those resources.
The same applies for if you include a carousel. It's kind of like slideshow, they call it too. If you do that, also you need to have alternative text for each of the images in that slideshow and have some sort of a control so that the user, if it switches at a point where the user wasn't able to see the previous image, they are able to control that. So basically a play, pause, and those buttons that you usually see when you're dealing with video content. Available from keyboard is the next one. Some users can't use a mouse or don't want to use a mouse, and I don't. I'm tired or I am browsing through content, and I rely on my tab. So these users rely on tabbing through the content, and your content should be reachable through the keyboard. That means that if you tap through your website, your users should be able to reach at least each link that is included in your website. So anything that is live, to put it somehow, any element in your website that has some sort of an interaction, you should be able to reach it with your tab.
I think honestly, if you want to see how important accessibility really is, the absolute best way to do that is to get on your website and only use the tab and enter
Mm-hmm.
button on your keyboard and see how frustrated you get and how quickly that happens.
Mm-hmm. And also, I forgot to mention that when you're tabbing through your content, you're going to see that there's a highlight around the content that is being visited upon at that point in time. It should be always highlighted so that the person knows where they're at that time. Okay, time sensitive. Again, it's somewhat related to video. Anything that is some sort of an interaction, a video, an animation, things like that should be properly dealt with in terms of accessibility. There are, as you see here, avoid causing seizures. There are certain health conditions that require or deter you. You shouldn't be seeing images in certain frequencies, and you can go more in depth in terms of what types of frequencies I'm talking about in the specific guidelines in the link that I'm providing at the bottom. And then compatible with current and future agents. All your content, all your websites or whatever you decide you're wanting to create should be accessible for screen readers, browsers, the whatever type of technology that has to be used to view that content. And I think that that's kind of like a very brief summary of what does it mean to guide yourself by the accessibility guidelines. You want me to? I think I should visit the link. Do you think?
We can do that. Yeah. I just wanted to say that you're getting all of these. You kind of explained where you're getting them, but there are different standards of accessibility that websites are asked to meet. And the WCAG 2.0, which you see in the URL, that has the different standards. And there's, correct me if I'm wrong, a double A and a triple A standard.
Yeah.
The double A is what you legally have to do to comply with accessibility standards, and the triple A is like perfection, right? So I mean, we're obviously going for the double A at
Yeah,
this point.
yeah.
Just one A would be cool right now, but
Definitely.
so that's sort of where this list is coming from.
Mhm.
It's like actual standards for what we have to do to comply legally, and then if we want to go above and beyond, they have additional standards to
Yeah.
make us perfect,
Mhm,
basically.
mhm.
So we can go to link if you want. If you
Mm. Here. Okay,
we'll
maybe.
go back to that.
Should we leave it for later, maybe?
Yeah,
Let's just leave it for later.
we don't have a plug-in on the computer, so if
Okay.
we have some time at the end, we'll pull that
Okay.
up.
But you have the URL and you can, I mean, maybe we could enter it in the chat so that
Mhm.
everybody can copy it.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. So moving on, these are more specific. These are things that you're definitely come across at some point that you might want to, as I quote unquote said here, accessify. The first item is color. Color, you're making decisions about color in your website as soon as you start writing something, right? You might be writing a paragraph or you might be designing a headline and you're gonna determine, what kind of color scheme are you gonna use. So the color needs to be high contrast between background and foreground. What does that mean? It means that if you have, let's say, like a light green on a blue background, that's not going to work because it's not easily discernible. People might be confronted with problems with low vision, or even for the any type of user that they might look at a content where there's no contrast, they are not going to be able to discern it. Uh, that is the background from the foreground. Can we visit these links that I placed here, or do we have to wait until the end? And okay, so we'll visit the links at the end of the presentation if we have enough time. So again, you see here this ratio here, 4.5 to 1. That's the color contrast ratio, and that might not mean to you anything at this point. At the end, I'm going to show you a way of looking at the different colors that you're intending to use in your design and how to make the decision of if they're accessible or not, if they're high contrast or not. Okay, the next one would be images. We talked about it already. If you include an image in whatever type of content you're putting together, you have to provide an alternate text. Alternate text can be done in different ways. For instance, if you're using Word, you're going to place the image and then you're going to go to the format format dialog, and there's a place there where you can include your alternate text. If you're doing HTML, if you're a web developer, there's a tag created for that, which is precisely the alt tag. If you are using WordPress on Drupal, there might be a window that pops up when you insert your image and that says alternate text, and that's where you can enter it. Videos provide captions and controls, and I talked a little bit about it already. If you're publishing a video as part of your content, you should always include captions and have a video player that has controls. If you're using YouTube, for instance, YouTube inherently has those controls, but there's some other players that you might come across that you want to ensure that has the ability for the user that is viewing the video to be able to control it, advance it, rewind it, pause it as they please. I mentioned here Camtasia because that's an application that I use to create video that allows for you to create captions. There's many different ways that you can accomplish this. Believe me, there's a YouTube functionality that creates automatic captions when you upload content. The audio needs to be really clear. So for someone like me that has an accent, these captions are not as automatic. I have to edit them once they're uploaded. But it helps you because it provides the functionality and it provides for you to wait for you to edit the captions if they're not totally accurate. In terms of structural elements, what I'm trying to convey here is that have your content be organized in a way that it appears, very easy to read and very well presented. And for that, you can resort to using headings. And I don't know if in Drupal or the content management systems that they use right now, how would that appear to them?
The headings.
Yeah.
Yeah, in their content editing screens, they have options for headings that have been preset. Our county editors, they're not accessible right now. Their headings aren't very accessible color-wise, but just the use of the headings increases that. So they're not exactly the right color at this point in time. We've had too many changes over the years, but yeah. So they have an option for different headings that have been preset no matter what platform they're on. And on the newer sites, we control those a little bit more, so we don't actually change them from black, but they do increase in size to denote importance.
Look, I would like to make a parenthesis here to say accessibility is not a number. I mean, I don't want it to sound frustrating or anything, but I feel like we have to work towards accessibility continually. It's not a 100% ever because we keep updating our content, we keep working on new things, and if you make it intentional and make it part of what you do as you go about your day, it's the right measure. I mean, we're never going to be perfect, but by just working towards it, I think that's the one thing that we have to do.
I agree. We've talked about this a lot. I think accessibility as a whole, the topic is, it's almost like just running down the rabbit hole like Carefree, because there is so much to it and there are so many different aspects, and it does get overwhelming really fast.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're trying to point out the things, and we're not asking you to go back and fix everything. That's not what we're saying. We're more explaining what it really means and what all it means to you and your job. And if you just start including some of these things,
Definitely.
it will just become just another thing that you do instead of this big process.
Going back to headings, many of the applications that you come across today have already preset headings like the ones that Christy mentioned that you guys may have. For instance, if you're creating a Word document, the Word application already provides for you to select pre-styled headings. So that helps a lot. And more you're going to come across those functionalities because all companies are, a lot of companies are growing a lot more, I guess, conscious about and intentional about their accessibility initiatives. Okay, with the next one, skip navigation links, it means that if you have some content and you're tempted to say click here and insert a link in that click here, no, don't do that, please. Have your links be self-explanatory. Like for instance, if you see here the skip navigation links text that I have in the slide has it's underlined, it's because it's a link itself and it's self-explanatory. The content that that link is going to take you to, it's related to skip navigation links. Does that help?
Yeah, I mean, you could technically say click here, but add more to that so that it's self-explanatory. Click here for more
Exactly.
crop news or something. Yeah.
Yeah. The reason for that is that let's say that I have a non-visual user who uses a screen reader, and sometimes they just resort to a list of links. The list of links that it's presented to them through their screen reader. If there's like a few different links that say click here, they're not necessarily going to know where they're going. So it's useful for them to know what the link is linked to. Even for the visual user, I mean, when you come across a link that says click here, it might not be as self-explanatory as a link that's the one I just showed you. So in terms of tables, if you create a table, try for it to be as simple as possible. If you have too much text to include in a table, there might be one another format that you can use. But if you do have to resort to a table, make sure that you have headers for that table and have a summary attribute and have IDs. It depends on how you put your content together. But if you do have tables, just make sure that you have headers so that the user can know what what the table contains. In terms of forms, nowadays there's a lot of forms that are online, and if you don't have label in that form that tells the person how to fill it out, they might not be able to fill it out correctly. So have clear instructions and have labels for your forms. And finally, PDFs. We nowadays we create a lot of PDFs, and PDFs are not native, to put it somehow, type of content. Most PDFs come from Word or PowerPoint or some other application. If you do the work up front of making things accessible in Word or in PowerPoint or whatever other application you're coming from, your PDF is going to be accessible. So start accessible rather than waiting until it is a PDF and have to go back and remediate it, because it's really hard to make a PDF accessible once it is not. Having said that, if you come across a PDF that is not accessible, there's different ways that you can do this, and that's a session in and of itself. And I have something scheduled. I don't know.
Yes, I think
gonna...
it might be two more. Not the next one. The next one I believe is on video captioning. We'll go into more specifics about that, and I believe the one after that might be the actual document accessibility. We devoted an entire session to show you the different tools, so that would be a time to come back and look at those.
Okay, the next thing that I wanted to bring your attention to is this testing tool that it's free. It's online. You just have to go to this URL, Wave WebAIM. I think Christy is going to include it for you in the chat box. The Wave testing tool allows for you to enter your URL, the URL of the website or the page that you want to test accessibility for, and it gives you a very easy to use report that even gives you suggestions about the measures you should take to make your content accessible. It's the one tool that many government agencies that oversee accessibility compliance is using. So it's good that you know about this. The one drawback that this tool has is that if you have a website that has say 100 pages, you would have to enter each one URL for each one of the pages to check through it.
It does get kind of technical in the reporting sometime as well. So if you do choose to do it and are wondering how to interpret it, Zaira or Extension IT would be um, able to help interpret the results.
Definitely. So, where to go for information? I have a website that my office has put together with great content and it's very searchable. So, the three things that I highlighted that I in the design of the website I try to call the attention to are the things that I found that most people were asking me about. So, I want to do it myself. What do I do? So you click on the button for doing it yourself, and it's going to, the first thing that is going to come up is the 10 quick measures that you can take for making things accessible and suggestions for it. On the middle, there's the Get Training link. The Get Training link allows you to go to the scheduled training that I offer face to face on campus. It also allows for you to ask for training if you want to do one-on-one sessions, be it via the web, via video conference, via audio conference, or if you want me to visit you, if you want to come visit me, we can arrange for all those types of trainings. And then you have the right, the third button, the third link, which takes you to resources. And the resources are categorized for depending on what type of content you create. So if you create a website, how do you go about doing that? Have it be accessible, and so on and so forth. So I feel like I was very I guess intentional. Again, I'm using this word a lot, but very intentional as to how to put the website, the digital access website together, because I wanted to be useful, usable by all sorts of different people that are have different jobs and work with different types of content. If you need anything, please make sure that you have it in your to-do list to contact me, and you can see there the general inbox that I have. It's digital access istate.edu. If you email me there, I'll respond right away. I'm always looking at it. And again, this is the URL for the website, my phone number, and the digital access email address.
So we're gonna try and get this set up so that Zaire can show you some of the simulators that she had. Um, so if anyone has any questions right now would be great. You can type those into the screen while we try to get this set up. Cool.
To the maximum. They can't hear any audio.
Can you still not hear us?
Now we can.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Okay, the next simulator would be the hearing loss simulator.
Yeah.
What's the URL for that? Oh, I'm never gonna be able to do star key
starkey.com.
like this.
Yes.
Okay.
/hearing-loss-simulator.
And I'm sorry about the slow typing. Okay, here it is. It looks like. So here it is. And I'm not sure if they're gonna be able to listen to that audio. I'm just gonna. So, in a coffee shop, just select the volume level of your computer. Okay, that we've done that. I'm not gonna play around with that. Select a sound by clicking one of the images on the color wheel below. And to play simulation, select the hearing loss level. So if you select, say, the coffee shop here, and I hope that, that comes up. So that's, I guess, mild. And now you can see the difference if you do it yourself. I'm not sure if you're being able to hear it in your own through the presentation, but you can experience this yourself. And then severe, you can tell the difference in types of perception and when you have hearing loss, how difficult it is for a person to hear the content, even when you're directing the conversation to them. Okay, well, what else did we have? Oh, we wanted to go to the WCAG. Is that the next one? Oh, wave. Okay.
You should be able to
Oh,
click on it.
copy it. Oh, click?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, it brings it
Bring it over there.
Okay. What is it? Seeing this one?
Mm-hmm.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
Yeah, just in case. There you go.
So here you have Wave. Wave is a testing tool for accessibility specifically. So I'm going to enter a URL, which is Iowa State's main website. Oops. Why is it that I can't? Okay, there you go. And that's the main website. And that's going to basically test the main page, the one main page at Iowa State's website. And as you see here, it gives you a report in the left-hand side. It's a summary, and it has no errors, thank God. And it has 0 contrast errors. Those are the 2 types of errors that I look at the most when I'm doing this type of test. When you do come across errors, this provides you with more details in the second page. Here I have only alerts because it's signaling that for instance, there's a few different long alternative texts. And those might be what you call false positives. So you have to be able to determine if, for instance, in this case, if there's an image that has a long descriptive text, it might be because it needs it. So that wouldn't be an error. But in the case of the summary, you see here there's 0 errors, 0 contrast errors. When there are contrast errors, let me use one another URL.
You can totally do it.
Which one?
Extension.
Extension. Oh.
EXT. Yeah, there we go. Dang keyboard.
I'm so frustrated with this keyboard. Extension.
.istate.edu.
Okay.
This won't be pretty.
So there are 7 errors listed and 13 contrast errors. Let's look at what does that mean. The errors, one missing alternate text. So if you click here, it's probably going to show you where is it specifically located. And you can go through the content here. There seems to be an image without an alternative text here.
And these news images are the ones that I was talking about, and we don't actually give them a field to enter alternative text when they're editing. So it's a problem with our configuration and platform. So this is through no error of the editor at all. It's just unavailable.
But at least it gives you a sense of what you can do when you do run a test. In terms of the contrast errors, you go to the contrast button, and there you can tell which ones are the ones that are being brought up. And again, there might be some here that are not, in fact, contrast errors. It looks like it's signaling that the byline, it's too low contrast, but it looks like it's a dark gray, if not black. So it might not be a contrast error. It might be just be that the text is really small. There's one contrast error here, for instance, about us. It might just be signaling that the shadow that signals that you're browsing, or I should say hovering over that content is not sufficiently contrasting with the foreground. Again, these are testing tools for the most part give you point of departure. They are not perfect by any means. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. There might be a bunch of different positive that are not so. Things that are not errors, in fact, that are signaled as errors. You have to go through them one by one and determine if that's the case. But it's good. It helps you identify possible things that you might have overlooked. I think we were gonna go to the WCAG, or was it? There was another thing that we wanted to look at.
Checker.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, I put it in the.
Okay. Yes, better because
There you go.
I can't seem to deal with this keyboard. So the color contrast checker, as you see here, WebAIM is an organization that has done a lot of work already on accessibility. And in the checker, you can enter your foreground and your background color. In this case, you can just enter the code, the HTML.
We can do
code.
White for the word mark and red for the red bar that we have. If you want to do that.
White.
Yes.
Do you have the? I don't see the color picker. They changed this around on me a little bit. Let me go to the permalink, and it's the same thing. So they used to allow for you to pick the color.
We can just do it. The visual identity guide and brand marketing guidelines, they have all of the colors that you're okay to use. So if you need the hex value, which is what the pound sign value is.
Let me see. White over black. Would it do?
Yeah.
Center back. They're asking for hex values.
No.
Don't enable?
No. Let me see if it's working for me. Yes, Mackenzie. That's the correct red. We know that. We're just trying to show you the color picker.
The color pick. It might be that it's a pop-up and it's not allowing me. The browser is not. Just give me.
I think it's just Internet Explorer. I think.
Oh, okay.
Let's try. There we go.
Oh my God! Thank you. I never use Internet Explorer, so that's why I was a bit confused. So if you click on the color, it's gonna allow for you to identify whatever color you're looking for. When we're looking for foreground, let's do the Iowa State colors.
Yes.
The orange, the gold.
If you want to type in the right hex value, I have that for you.
Okay.
It is CC.
So wait, let me.
You gotta include the pound sign in there.
So it's
CC and then 4 O's, zeros.
Mhm. Okay.
There you go. And then
And then should I hit enter? Yes.
that should probably be the
And
background. thing here.
then we can do it anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the Iowa State red, the one that you just gave me.
Yes.
And if you use that as the foreground on a white background, as you see here, for WCAG AA is a pass for normal text. For large text, in any case, it's a pass. It's a fail for WCAG AAA, which we're not looking to get there yet. At some point, we might, but right now it's okay. So it's a pass. This is what we're looking for, to have a pass at WCAG AA with normal text.
And these are the standards we were talking about a little bit earlier. Double A is what we need to comply to for legal purposes and because it's the right thing to do and part of the mission of the university. The AAA is shooting for perfection, which we're not doing.
We are at some point, but first let's take the first steps, baby steps.
Yes.
Okay, and you see the contrast ratio that I was talking about earlier. It's 4.5 to 1, the minimum. So on here it's over that. So I think we're good.
Do you want to, just because I talk about this a lot, do you want to do yellow instead of red, the Iowa State yellow
Okay.
with the white?
Yes.
I know the it's F1BE 48, I think. Yeah.
There it is. And that's a fail in any case. So don't use gold over white.
And if you switch them, it's a fail too.
Yeah, definitely. Look at the ratio. It's super low.
Yes, that's not even close to passing. So, and this is great, especially like even when you're designing print documents, would you suggest using this?
And if I don't have the hex value right away, I just color pick something that I feel it's really close, and you're not gonna err. You might want to, have the hex values if it's something that you know for sure there's no other color, no other way that you're going to get it. But sometimes I just do an approximation by using the color picker. If you have to do it really quick.
Yeah. There was that. Does anybody have any questions that we can help answer? Did you want this one?
Yes.
We'll just stay away from Internet Explorer. Oops. There you go.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So we close by showing you the web content accessibility guidelines. These are the documentation that the World Wide Web Consortium has put together to tell us everything about accessibility in terms of the web. And as you see here, there's 4 principles that they followed when they developed these guidelines. Content has to be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And what does that mean in detail? Well, if you want things to be perceivable, number 1, you should have text alternatives for any non-text content, and so on and so forth. So those are the ones that I tried to summarize in my previous presentation. But you may want to visit on those yourself, and here's the link and here's the website. It's very thorough, and it sometimes can be overwhelming. If you need help, please don't hesitate to contact either Christy or myself. With that,
If no one has any other questions, we'll go ahead and end the webinar. Oh, I see someone typing. This webinar was recorded and will be available. What do you want the link to, Kim? The one that she just had open is already in the chat box. If you're looking for that one, it is the third link that I put in.
Somebody else is typing.
So this will be recorded and we'll get a link out as soon as it's available. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. If there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and close the webinar. And if you have any questions after the webinar, please feel free to contact Zaira or myself. Have a good rest of the week, guys.
Did you give